Hey guys, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be in the world. It's Jamie Sargent here, Building Profit Sales Training. So this is a video I put together based off a number of questions that get asked, particularly with sales managers, sales directors, around making decisions on sales essentially. So decision making around your process, around complaints, around discounts for customers, around bulk deals. So I just wanted to run you through a system that I've used. So let me just share my screen with you guys. So let's jump on there. Okay. So this is the Building Profits decision-making model. This is a model that I have used in my sales career over the last 7 years, and also in my policing career prior to this. It's actually called the National Decision-Making Model in the police. So slightly different. But it actually converts really well into sales in terms of managing and making decisions around sales for your team. So very, very importantly, reasons why you want a process on decision making. Decision making in sales can bog you down. It gets your frustration level up. It gets the sales team's frustration levels up, and it also gets the frustration levels of the customer up, because if there's a complaint, for example, or a customer's asking about a discount and we can't get a direct answer, it frustrates us. And the typical example I use this, and I've seen this happen, and I've been involved in this, in fact, is in car sales. Notoriously, you'll go in, there'll be a conversation between you and the salesperson, and it'll get to a point where you're appraising the vehicle, they're appraising your vehicle, and you've test driven their vehicle, and it's down to the numbers, and you're saying, okay, I'm looking to pay £300 a month. So I want to give you my car, £1,000 deposit and £300 a month. That's my commitment. Salesperson will come back and say, oh, this package is 430. He'll say, is there any better you can do? And the salesperson will go off. They'll go to the manager's office, usually, just at your site. This mystical manager will sit in that office and send back a price. They'll come back, we're at 380 or so 300. Maybe you can push to 320. And it goes back and forth like this, and it's a game of tennis. And what it does is it builds discredit in the salesperson, because why isn't the salesperson trusted to make those decisions? Now, granted, you can't let a salesperson make every single decision. If your margin, for example, is at 40%, and this particular deal goes down to 20, perhaps as a manager, director, business owner, you want to be involved in that because of the such low margin. What is the risk? What is the factors behind that? And other times, what it also does is for the customers, if we can get a decision quickly, it builds the customer's trust. It speeds the process up, and it keeps the customer on the right track of, we get into a decision, and we get into a decision for them to spend money with you, to trust you, to believe that you are the business, the company to deal with. So this is my interpretation of what is known as the police's national decision-making model, and I've called it the Building Profits decision-making model. It's pretty much the same process, as I say. It's just reflected in sales within your business. So whether you're a business owner or a sales manager, sales director, this will fit really, really well for you. And bear in mind, guys, police officers, they make decisions on very little information sometimes about people's lives, about risk, about liberty. So this model works really well for 90% of your decision making. There is always going to be some decisions that you need to take a breather, take a step back, review, think about, look at the bigger picture. But if you can clear 90% of the smaller decisions away from you, then your mind is more focused on the relatively big ones that you've got, which will be much fewer. And in that case, what it also does is those bigger ones don't take as long either to resolve, because you've now got your focus on maybe 3-4 decisions rather than 30-40 decisions. So here it is, right in the middle there, we've got codes of business. So codes of business is essentially your morals, your values, what you stand for in business, what you're looking to achieve, what you commit to your customers. Code of business, what is your commitment to your customers? What are you going to deliver, and what are you on a mission to deliver for your customers? And that can be as simple as excellent customer service, shortened process to ensure our customers are able to move on and resolve whatever issue it may be. And it can be anything in between, whatever your code of ethics are. I have a particular focus on making sales natural. So one of my commitments is I want the sales process and the sales speech to be natural. I want you to be human and not a scripted robot. But at the same time, I want you to follow a process, and that process will give you the structure for each of your sales calls right up until you get to the objection and closing, because that's where you have to be a little bit fluid in terms of depending on what the objection and closing issues are as to how you handle that. So right at the top here then, moving on, we have information. Now, always start with information. You need to consider what information is available to you about this decision. Now, by information, that might be the customer in terms of their history with you, their length of time they've bought from you. It might be who the customer is. It might be the value of this particular sale. It might be the value overall of that customer to the business. It might be, the impact of making that decision for one customer. Is that going to send a tidal wave out to 10 other customers? And what's the impact of that going to look like? You want to gather as much information about this decision that you're going to make as possible. And usually they are relatively quick. If somebody's asking for a reduced price, is it because they want to take 20,000 units instead of 4,000 like they normally do? Is it because competitors come in and said, actually, I can do exactly the same product for a much cheaper price? What is the reason why they're asking for whatever it is they're asking for? If it's a complaint, what is complaint? How long have they had the product or service? Has it actually failed? Where has it gone wrong at this stage that we know of? What other information do I need about this complaint to make a decision to make this move forward? So once we've got that, we need to assess our risk to your business. Now, this is always a very, very big one, because assessing the risk in your business means to look at the impacts, as I say, of you making that decision and 10 of the customers find out about it and then they want the same. It's if you don't do anything, then what is the customer going to likely to do? If you don't do anything and you think you're justified not doing anything, can you justify it to the customer? If you're not going to do anything and the customer's actually in the right and they start going on the social media campaign, then what's the risk of that to you? What's the financial risk to your business? Is this going to cost you a lot of money? Is this going to cost you a little bit? Clearly, if you've got to make a decision that's going to cost £50 versus £5,000, you're more likely to make that £50 decision instantly. The £5,000 one, depending on the nature of your transactions, you might have to take a step back and think about here. You need to assess the risk to your business. You've got to be focused on all the impact factors of your business, and bearing in mind this is about your business name, your sales member of staff's name, and if you don't assess the risk fully, what can happen is you make a quick snap decision that is wrong. But if you assess the risks fully and quickly, you make a decision that's right for the business, right for the customer, and right for all concerned. So we move on. So we know what the risk is. We've got our information. We know what the risks are to the business by not doing anything and by doing something. So what are our actual options? Now, what I would suggest here in the early days, and I've used this model for 20 years, so it's ingrained in my memory. But for yourselves in the early days, considering options to resolve, write down what the options are to resolve this complaint or to resolve this customer's issue. Are the options that you offer the discount? Are the options that you send an apology card and flowers to accept some responsibility and investigate it? Your options are to ring the customer up and have a one-to-one discussion, ring the customer up and have a face-to-face discussion. What are your options to resolve this? And there obviously are only so many options that you can have. It's going to either cost you money, it's going to be a difficult conversation sometimes, but you need to get it resolved and get it off your desk as soon as possible. And of course, with those options will come the impact of those options as well. So again, reassess, if I offer this customer a £50 discount on this particular order, are they going to ask for that £50 every time because now they suddenly think I can do it on every single order because we've done it on this one? In which case, that's about making it very, very clear that this is a one-off because of the scenario. It's not something you would do day in, day out, day in, day out. It's if the options are, that you're not going to, let's say it's replace the item, then you need to explain to the customer fully why you're not going to replace it, justify it to the customer. And the way I'd say that you do that is justify the scenario to a colleague. So get the colleague to play the customer, do some role play before you ring them, and justify out, all the reasons why. Get the colleague to role play all the comeback of, well, that's not fair. Whatever else they might come up with, trading standards, words and such. but it's whatever the impact of that decision, whatever the impact, sorry, of those options are, you need to assess it and then make sure that you're role playing out all the possibles so that you know fully how this would work. And then you're going to take the action and review the outcome. So whatever that decision is, take that action, review the outcome. And then, of course, if that turns into a bigger issue, then you essentially go back around the circle again, so back into information. But taking action could be, yes, I'm going to give them a £50 discount on this particular order, but you make it very clear I'm not going to do that in future. So what I'm just going to run you through now, guys, is a decision very recently that I've made with a customer. It's around one of their biggest customers. So to give you some idea, for this business, this particular account is £100,000 in sales a year. And they are a global customer to the business. So they've got other options, you have to bear that in mind. They've got other options who they can go and speak to. They've got other suppliers, but they've been with this particular company for 15 plus years. So the situation is that the company have said, because of all the delays during COVID, that they were going to fine their suppliers if they were late delivering. So basically the company would send in a purchase order with a forward date on for the order to be delivered. And if you couldn't deliver it on that date, then you would be fined a value of the air freight to ship the product around the world, wherever it needed to go to. So this varied on some of their purchase orders between £500 up to about £3,000. But this was happening during COVID at quite a frequent level because of the impact of COVID and raw materials and such. And of course, they as a customer knew this, and what they were doing then was getting essentially free stock or free transport on their products. They already got a very, very good rate. So this is what they took as an approach to their suppliers. So what we did is we assessed the risk to the business. Well, obviously we can't keep paying out all these different air freight costs. It's just insane. So what's the options to look at here, and what's the risk? So the risk to the business is essentially, if we challenge them, we could lose the business. Now that's £100,000 account literally gone overnight, and without any kind of secondary option. We could challenge them, and we could win it. We could essentially win it, or we could convince them that actually it's an unfair clause right now, given the world scenario. We could assess the risk to the business, and we could say, or we did say, in fact, well, what if the risk to the business is they do nothing and they just accept it because nobody else has pushed on this? So what were the options to resolve? Well, there was a global buyer who was based in Cambodia. So they needed clearly speaking to, but so did several of their area directors around the world. So the options to resolve were essentially, the options were, and they are, we tell them that we're not going to do it any longer. So if they wanted to maintain supply from the company, then it would be on the proviso that there's no clause because of the world's economy. We also offered a 12-month forecasting where the stock would be held for them because they're such a good customer. The stock would be held for them on a draw-off basis. So they would forward order 12 months worth of stock over purchase orders, and they would commit to taking a certain amount every 90 days. What that meant for the supplier is stocks in the warehouse, but it's sold. What it meant for them is it secured their supply and it didn't interrupt their supply. And the other option, obviously, was, of course, we tell them we are prepared to work with it, and we just continue to do it and lose a lot of money. And actually, the orders that are going out are worth next to nothing because all the money's been absorbed into transport costs. So what's the impact of those three? Well, of course, a couple of them are, or one of them clearly is the running the risk of losing the business. The one where we're saying give us 12 months forward orders and we can manage that in a forecast and we can keep the stock and you can draw it off is the best for both parties because the stock's then forecasted, it's on the ground and it's pre-sold. So essentially in the warehouse, there's a section that's pre-sold to the customer. And then the other impact is, of course, that you tell them basically bugger off and they do bugger off. So that are the choices. Now, the action we actually took with this customer was to tell them that we couldn't continue to supply them under the clauses of an air freight charge every time something was delayed. And that actually, if they forecasted even 6 months in advance, then that would be beneficial because we could order and hold 6 months worth of stock. Now, by doing that, that meant that they could hold 6 months worth of stock. They didn't have to take it all in one hit. They could spread it over that 6 months, but it allowed the business to support the customer better. And in turn, the customer is in a better position because they committed no money to it until the time they call the orders forward to get them delivered. And it wasn't interrupting their supply chain. And going back through the circle again, so now the position is customers happy, suppliers happy, everyone's in a win-win situation, problems off the desk. And that took, in reality, 3 hours to resolve going through this circle, because it's not that hard, guys. Making a decision like this is not that hard. It's doing the right thing. It's knowing what the right thing to do is for the customer, but also for the business. It's not about challenging customers. It's not about fighting with them or, you know, entering into this sparring kind of match. It's about what is the best solution for the customer, for the business, that gets everybody into the same boat, everybody winning. And that is the way it works, the way it's done, the way I've used it for 20 plus years. And you know, it's a 99.9% effective methodology to use. Of course, when you're making bigger decisions, so for example, if you've got a complaint that's perhaps valued at £20,000 and it's a product that's failed, you go through this cycle, but just at a much slower pace. You may need to gather more information. You may need to speak to manufacturer's warranty, etc., before you carry on to the next stages. But in essence, the principle's the same, just at a much slower pace. But in this position, you know, whether you've got sales teams that you want to say, look, you can offer a slight discount of 5% off everything, but you need to justify all these areas to me. Perfect. You know, if you've got to give sales guys and girls some freedom, some rein to move forward. Otherwise, it looks like they just run to the manager every time, and that's where they lose credibility and they lose trust in you as a supplier, and then the salesperson as the person they trust. So that is my take on. Let's just go there. So that's my take on decision making within the, particularly in the sales management, sales directorship level. Make sure you are working with your team, not against your team, essentially. Hope that's helpful. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me, Jamie at buildingprofits.co.uk, and I'll catch you very soon.